Now we take a business-driven approach. How can companies identify and leverage circular value pools that generate both economic and ecological benefits? Our next speaker will break it down for us, and please welcome Marc Hetzer, Director Business Consulting Circular Ecosystem at IY. Applause! EY is conquering the stage. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the warm welcome, and warm welcome also from my side. I couldn't ask for a better intro than Henning from the Siegfried Jakob Werke, because he was already talking about value. And the question is, how can we use that value and put it into really value pools and monetize the whole thing? I think in current times, we all know that circular economy has given us ecological, social, governance benefits that we all know, but we all know that we need to monetize it at the end. And this is what the next couple of minutes will be all about and how we approach it. We all know that the circular economy overall market will continue to grow. We do expect 13% in average over the next couple of years, up to 2033. And one way, obviously, of accessing those growth potential is through value pools. And we have structured them into 8 different ones. Let me start with the top right side. We obviously have the most fundamental one. We all need to comply with regulations. This is one extreme topic, not only with the old regulations, but also with upcoming regulations or recent public regulations. And this is obviously one of the major drivers that we see, and also one of the value pools that we see in the next couple of years. The next topic is obviously the reduction of costs, and obviously the reduction also in reuse of your materials, your components that you use. One of the other value pools that we see is the acceleration of decarbonization, not only for your own company, but also when we look further down the the value stream map, that you are enabling your clients either becoming more circular, and then obviously use that as a decarbonization potential on your scope 3 emissions on yourself, and then obviously scope 1 emissions and scope 2 emissions in the usage phase of your clients. The fourth point is, as you can see here, the increase of resilience. I will later touch that topic again. I think that is one of the topics that Henning from the Siegfried Jakob Werke mentioned as well. We do see that there are geopolitical conflicts. We see massive and complex supply chains the companies have been building up over the last 30 years. And we all see now the frictions over the last couple of years that we are struggling. So there's costs in managing those supply chains. There's costs in the risk management of those supply chains. And with becoming more circular, using the materials that are already on the market, that is a bottom line benefit that every company needs to look at and see how they can use the circular approach in utilizing and dipping into that value pool. The fifth point, and that is something people talk a lot about, is capture, obviously, of new markets. That obviously depends on your business model. Once you change your product and you expand into new business model, there's also the potential to create new markets, to discover new markets. That could be with your own products. That could also be enabling others and your clients, for example, that then touch new markets. So this is something that is also untouched and obviously will have a top-line benefit on it. Then one of the most discussed ones, as we see, is the customer-centric innovation. A lot of companies consider themselves or their products as already customer-centric, but when we really look at the details here and we look how the product at the end of the life cycle is treated, we often see that it's not built and developed for staying with your customer. It's more like at the end being scrapped and teared apart. Second last one, building brand and awareness. That is, I think, a crucial one with regards to the marketing and sales aspects for your products. And there was the last one, leveraging the ecosystem. And I think that is also something that Henning touched previously upon. we all need to work together. The cake is big enough for everybody, but we also need to find a way to slice the cake into the different portions to make it happen. The value pools that we see are framed by 4 imperatives. Obviously, the most crucial one, the environmental imperatives, scarcity of natural and non-renewable resources, the water scarcity topics that we will face in a couple of regions over the next couple of years, but also the growing emissions versus the net zero targets that most of the companies have set themselves. On the top right, regulatory imperative, I've touched upon that. We see the national circular economy strategies popping up. Germany has published hers last year. But we also do see new regulations like the eco-design for sustainable product regulations coming up with a lot of focus, for example, on the digital product passport. Yeah, we do see at the moment that companies, or a lot of companies, are still not ready to do that, and there's a lot of groundwork to be done. Social imperative, obviously the consumer shift, not only towards more sustainable products, but also towards more circular products in itself. And then looking into your own value chain, the ensuring of workers' health and human rights topics, that is still a topic that every company has to look at, not only from a regulatory perspective. And that brings me to the last one, the economic imperative. I said it already, supply chain demand imbalances and the amid raw material scarcity, and then obviously lead to price volatilities, especially now we have seen it over the last couple of weeks. Some tariffs have been put up, and that obviously caused a major friction already in supply chains that forced discussions on how to if companies want to relocate, leave certain geographical regions. So if you want to make yourself independent from it, you better start looking into circular economy and what kind of value pools you can discover there. The potential that all companies have with regards to circular value pools obviously depend a bit on where you stand in the value chain, but also what kind of business model you drive. We all know the R strategies, starting from recycling, obviously, over remanufacturing, repurposing, rethinking. And this is one starting point when you're looking into the value pools. Where do you stand in your value chain? What kind of horizon can I touch and influence with my products, with my business models? And this is something where you need to look at and decide what are my players I also need for my ecosystems around me. Am I the one that is currently doing the recycling? Then you always have to look upstream. What are the companies that provide you the materials for it? If you are a company that is an OEM, for example, and you know that your materials or your products at the end get scrapped, end up in a recycling company, you want to regain those materials, you have to find a way of sharing those profits, obviously, with a recycling company. The question is how big the wheel needs to be that you want to turn at the beginning. Most companies start with regular circularity topics within their own company. They talk about scrap material coming from production. They're talking about regaining of water topics, for example. They talk about multi-way packaging materials. And this is a very good starting point to learn. The efforts stay mostly within the company, and most of the time quick success is given, and that obviously leads also to return on invest that can be used for further investments into other topics. Second step, we do see often that the downstream value chain is looked at. So how can I, with my product portfolio, with my services that I offer, enable my customers to become either more circular or help them to decarbonize? And how can that be an ecosystem that we can build together where we both profit not only from a raw material perspective, but also in a decarbonization value pool perspective. And then obviously going full circle, when you're closing the loop here, that is where a lot of companies still are. And that is a point where the companies really need a lot of investment. There's most of the time a long time horizon behind it, depending obviously on your product life cycle. And that is one of the large topics that most companies we see at the moment have not touched yet. How we are tackling it, or how does a company tackle it, ideally? We call it a filter. we throw in all products, all services that you offer. You need to have a value radar in place, so basically a radar that decides which products or services to basically hold a value with regards to circular economy. So once that is done, that filtration is done, you need to have an evaluation model in place that says, okay, I know I have certain products or components or services that hold a value with regards to circular economy. What do I need to do to realize that? By when can I do that? And what are the conditions that need to be in place to make that happen? And then the last one, obviously, the decision-making process, meaning what is the defined set of KPIs that gives me my priority list with regards to I'm going to start with this one first, and then on the long run, 5 to 10 years time frame, these are the topics I want to see last. Let me close everything with one example and a couple of numbers that we have seen through projects, research, and studies. This is the resilience topic I was originally talking about at the beginning. We do see, as from a value side, cost stability by closing the material loops. We do see enhancing the resilience up to 80% by closing the loops and in your supply chain. We do have key enablers that need to be in place. One of them is a third-party risk management. You need to be aware of what kind of exposure do you have to your global supply chain and your global raw materials. And also one of the enablers, as I mentioned, is the collaboration and partnerships. That could be ecosystems, that could be industry alliances that you have, but those two we see as key enablers for the topic. The level of maturity, also as Henning said, is already quite high. We do already recover 76% of all aluminium. Do we always use it in a closed loop? No. The same with rubber. In Germany or Europe as a wider space, we do recover 95% of all end-of-lifetime tires. But do we use them? Do we use the materials that are inside? No, most of them are going into a thermal recycling. They are basically burned, so it's a waste of the materials inside, and it goes purely into energy. But there are also challenges. The integration of circular practices that we see at the moment, less than 20% of all supply chain operations have fully integrated circular economy practices and third-party risk managements in their operations, in their target setting. And this obviously makes it extremely difficult to steer those processes and to grow up with your company into those maturity levels that you need to make circular economy happen. With that, let me close it. Thank you for your participation. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you.
Thank you, Marc. So what would be your call to action for the audience to really go on a sustainable, successful journey and future?
I would say start now. If you're stumbling, if you're falling, get up again, learn from it, find new ways of doing it. It is a complex topic, obviously, especially when you look outside your own system or your own company, when you need to involve your ecosystem. They all want to earn money, and the question is how you're sharing the cake with them. But if you're not starting, if you're not getting exposure, if you're not learning what others are doing, it's going to be difficult if you're left behind, because once the cake is shared, a new cake needs to be baked, obviously, and that is even more difficult. And you share the cake. That's it, the share of the cake. So thank you very much. Applause for Marc. Thank you.